can post it on his, social media for the people who are into cars like him. I was like, okay, sure. No. I took a picture of him with the model, and then we went to another car, and he asked me again to take a picture of him with the model, and I took the picture again. By the third car, I was like, what the fuck is going on? You are telling you have your wife taking picture of you with other fucking models so you can post it online and show your friends. What? This isn't acceptable. And I exploded. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And even before the wedding, in our apartment, he went to a bachelor party. He decided he's gonna have a bachelor party, and this was bringing up things I went through with Victor. I'll go through it later. He did a bachelor party, so I was like, okay, I don't have any. I am a loner. I don't. For me, it's like, So as he went to his bachelor party, I went to the movies. I spent the whole day at the movies. And I came back home to find him masturbating to porn. The type of women he saw at his bachelor party, and I exploded, right? I was like, we were already married, right? So he set up the bachelor party because of the introductory wedding we were having to come out as a couple, right? So at that point I was like, I don't want to get married to you anymore. This is over. I called my sister Kali and I was like, yeah, I don't want to get married. This guy, all he does is masturbate. And then Kali was like, oh, I didn't know he was a pervert. And I froze because I was like, Kali is renowned, this is what she does. I exposed myself, basically, I was like, just hearing her call my husband at that point a pervert, I was just like, no, he's not a pervert, I did not share my sexual experience with anybody. So I realized at that point that, I don't want to share anything, because anytime I share anything with my family, they use it against me and expose me. If I do something they don't like, they will start blurting it out in public and saying everything to everybody. So I closed down and I was like, no, he's not a pervert, forget about it. And I basically, moved on from that experience. John and I got married, and as we went to Vegas, I exploded with him asking me to take pictures of him and models so he can post it online. I started really realizing what I got myself into, So as we, at that point, I just focused on my career. I was like, I eventually doubled his salary, basically. So he approached me and he was happy. He was like, wow, yeah, now that you are making the big bucks, I can finally buy myself the racing car I want. And he bought himself the racing car he wanted. It was great. He was happy, and, my success was his success. We were like partners. So he asked me for help. He was like, okay, how would you go by if I wanted to, can you help me? How should I go by in asking my uncle for a raise, And it's so beautiful because even his uncle and him, he never shared these things. When we go to family events, his uncle, they will hug and they will talk, they will act like if nothing. This guy was belittling and berating John at work, and yet during family meetings they acted like nothing happened, And even before that, right, when we went to our honeymoon in Benin. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's like I have to share these things because it's like the process, it's leading somewhere. Right? At a point in Benin, my sisters asked John's sister what she thought about me. Right? They asked her, and she blurted out that she felt like I was mean to John. And that was the first I heard of it. I was like, yeah, she was like, Jenny's very mean to John. And I was like, mean to John? That's a first. I was so shocked by this statement, you know, because this person has never, in the 2 years John and I dated, and even we lived together for over a year, he has never called her. She had never spent any time with us, you know. She has never surfaced, you know. So for her to make such a statement, you know, I knew where it was coming from. I just look at her mom, you know, because no matter what her mom tried, you know, if I say no, it was no, you know. So her mom could not have any control over John. And as we got married, a lot of the family friends would keep telling me, you know, we never thought John would get married before. What should we call her? What should we call her? Let's call her. How are we gonna call her? Let's call her Gina. Yeah, let's call her Gina. Yeah, they were like, we never thought John would get married before Gina, you know. And it was such an interesting, that's when I started noticing the competition between John and his sister, right? So a week before our wedding, right? A week or so before our wedding, we went to a bar mitzvah of John's cousin was going to a bar mitzvah. And she approached us. She approached John, and she was asking John if we can change the wedding date because her guest at the wedding, which was one of her friends, had an exam. So we need to change, John needs to tell me to change the wedding date to accommodate the guest she's bringing to the wedding. And John came to me all excited and was like, yeah, you know, Gina is asking if we can change the wedding date, and because her guest at the wedding cannot make it. I exploded right there, right in her face. I was like, what the fuck is going on? A week away, you have the audacity to even come and ask me this. You cannot answer your own sister. You cannot answer that question by yourself. You want us to change the wedding date a week away because your friend has an exam. My sisters are also in college. They have exams. If I'm not changing the date even for my own sisters, why the fuck will I change it for your guests? I speak truth. This is how I speak. So when I speak like this, they're not used to it. You know? So yeah, she labeled me, you know, her and her mom labeled me as me being mean to John because they couldn't figure out why they couldn't control this guy anymore. Yeah, because when this guy John comes to me, he knows exactly what I'm gonna say. This is why I started noticing why John was clinging on to me. So as these things got exposed and John came to me and he was like, can you help me to get a raise with my uncle? So I told him how to do it. We drafted the letter. I read the letter. I told him where to change it, which salary he was comfortable with. Basically, he wanted to match my salary, have more than me. You know, we were inspiring each other. There's nothing wrong with it. You know, he inspired me to really push my career, you know, making fun of my $10. Yeah, within 5 years, I reached 6 figures. That's right. Yeah, when I want something, I always get it, no matter what. You know, that's how I was. That's how I am. You know, I know who I am. A woman of my own. That's right. Yeah. So he drafted the letter. He sent it to his uncle. He got the raise. Yeah, he got the raise. And I got the job I wanted. I came to a point that I got the salary I wanted. Um, everything was lined up. I got to the hedge funds, and I was the accounts payable manager. Everything was lined up for me, but I couldn't wake up in the morning. I didn't want to go to work. I started complaining, and it's when I start complaining something is not right, right? Because I was navigating certain things with my family. My brother Rogelio was constantly asking for money. I was basically sending him money all the time, and at a point he went to jail because he got arrested. He didn't have his papers. He was in one of those states where people can ask you for proof of citizenship, and as they asked him for this, he didn't have his papers. So he was put in jail, and I had to step in. My dad basically disowned him. He was not talking to my dad. So I had to deal with the embassy, the Beninese embassy, so they can give him his papers, because he was not born in Benin. He was born in Romania. So his birth certificate showed where he was born. So the US was sending him back to Romania, where we didn't have any connection with our family back there. Everything, our connection with them was totally severed when my mom died. And my mom never kept us in connection with them even prior to her death. So basically, it was very scary. I had to reach out to my dad for help. My dad refused at a point to help, and as I was struggling and dealing with the ambassador, I guess they reached out to him, and eventually my dad assisted me. He got the papers. They sent him back to Benin, and basically he was staying at home. My dad was in another country. So basically he was staying at our home in Benin. He didn't have to work, so basically he would call me and I would send him money, and he would call me the next day and tell me he lost the money, to send him another one, more. And then he would tell me he lost it again, to send him again more money. And I would feel such distress, because I am trying to also sustain my life here, this guy, and he used guilt, right? He would tell me, oh yeah, you have everything, you have a good life, so you just want me to starve and die. And it he knew exactly what to do. He used that distress, that sense of abandonment, the death of my mom, to get what he wanted from me. So it's only later on, as my dad went to Benin, we went to Benin as well. And I'll get into those details later, right? My dad decided to take him with him at his post in another country. And as my brother went over there was conflict between him and my dad. And basically, my dad sent him back and said he didn't want anything to do with my brother anymore, and that I was enabling my brother by helping him and by sending him money, and that he wanted nothing to do with us anymore. Now that he was remarried, he had children, he had his new family. Basically, my dad called me and told me that I was toxic, and that he never wanted to talk to me again. He basically disowned me in that moment. So I had not talked to my dad for 5 years. He disowned me for 5 years and rejected me because I was assisting my brother. I'll get into that conversation later. So as that happened, I came to a crash in my career, because my career was mostly fuel for me to prove to my dad that I can do everything without him. I didn't want anything from my dad. I was like, I'm gonna forge myself, and I wanted to prove it to him. And as my dad disowned me, I didn't know what was the point of me working so hard. All John wanted was just us making money so we can save and save and save, and prove to people that we were successful. And I could not get up and go to work anymore. I was like, what's the point of all of this? Where are we heading? I don't, I'm basically an orphan. I am working hard for these superficialities, but my family, nothing tasted good. That's when, I started telling John that I want a divorce. This is not the life I wanted. I took a wrong turn somewhere, and, all all he does is pretend, because now it's like even my sisters, as they saw my reaction in Benin when Gina said that I was being mean to John, they also started using that to trigger me. And I'll get into it, right? And they don't know why. They didn't know why, right? Because when we went to Benin a couple of times, and when we go to Benin, it's like John will be like, your dad should pay for these things, should pay for the vacation, he should pay for this. And I'm like, this guy cannot afford it. And he will be like, yeah, but he's a diplomat, And I will look at him, I'm like, a diplomat is just a title, it means nothing, The country pays a certain amount, my dad has his own, issues, he's just pretending this, he's a very stoic and proud person, when he doesn't have money, he doesn't know how to say it, he just pretends. And John will be like, yeah, but he should be the one paying for these things. I'm like, you want me to tell my dad to pay for the car we rented when I know he cannot afford it, So he was like, yeah, but then it should be just for us. So I'm like, you want me to rent a car just for me and let my dad walk? You want my family to walk, what difference does it make? When we go on vacation, we rent a car for ourselves anyway. What difference does it make? Because yeah, but that's not their money. And I would explode, because I was like, you can't do this shit. This is my family. We have to, I have to be there for them. They are part of me. So when I buy, and at that point, I would just tell him, it's not your decision. I earned this money. You don't get to tell me how I get to spend it with my family, So those were the boundaries that I had in place. But then when I crashed after my dad disowned me, I was like, no, this is not, something is wrong. I want a divorce. This doesn't work for me anymore. So that's when he started self-harming himself, right? Because he observed how Rogelio used me and through guilt to get me to do things, because I used to share everything with John. He was my partner, I went into this relationship, he was my family, so for me, I hid nothing from him. I'll be like, yeah, but what happens if he dies? What happens if he gets hurt? I will panic, I will have panic attacks, and I will keep just sending the money to my brother Rogelio. As he saw that, right, when I asked for a divorce at that point, he started taking like huge pans and pots in the kitchen, and he would bang his head really hard, or he would hit the wall, and they were dancing the wall, and I would start having panic attacks. I would sit on the floor, I would keep my head between my legs, and I would be like, I would start hyperventilating, and I would be like, okay, we don't have to get divorced. We don't have to get divorced, that's fine, so he saw how to keep me in place, right? I enabled that because the level of fear, I was not conscious of my my traumas then. There was like huge resistance and fear that would surface when I would watch him, hurt himself. Because I knew this guy went to a psychologist, a therapist before we met. because he was so distressed by what he faced in his environment. And still with that, knowing that, I decided to marry him. So I saw the impact in me leaving him. He has to face his family on his own, and what I was giving him, I was sheltering him from the control from his mom. And technically, with this silent competition with him and his sister, he was kind of like, he cannot do better without me, right? So every time I would come to the point, I'm like, yeah, there's something is not right here. This is not what I wanted. It's not. I took a wrong turn. There's something else. I want love. This is not love. This is just a pretense. He'll be like, no, Jen, you don't know what a family is. You never had a family. You had a toxic family. And he would say these things, and I'm like, I'll be like, maybe he is right. Maybe it's because I grew up with a dysfunctional family. I can't accept this. So I give it another try. And his masturbation kept coming, and we're even further. All he does is masturbating. And I try to work it out. I was like, you triggering me with this masturbation. And he was like, but I never reject you. Every time you desire me, I am there. Just, I... At that point, I didn't know it was a testament to who I am, right? I was just like, the guilt that would come up. So I started watching porn with him. I started playing with the porn with him, and the only porn I will tolerate will be, women. If there's no several women, so it had to just be women porn, because the presence of a man just triggered me. I tried to work all of this out with him, and it was like, I cannot, I could not. I would just sit down and I'm like, John, I tried, I cannot anymore. This is not what I want. So the cycle will begin again. And what happened is that he started having severe migraines. Every day he'll be like, I have a migraine, and it will last for like days and stuff. So I was like, let's go to a doctor. And we went to a doctor, and the doctor told us that he has cataract, and they have never seen anyone with a cataract at his age. They were like, he must have suffered severe traumas, like a shock. Did he got hit with something? Did something happen to his head? Did he, and that's when it's like, I started having a panic attack right there. And his mom was there. The day of his surgery to remove the cataract, his mom was there, and she witnessed the panic attack. I was hypervent. I cried. I was like, because I knew the shock and what has caused this cataract, right? It was him banging his head against the wall and with heavy pots, so I do not leave him. It created the cataract. So I had to face that truth, and the distress I felt was so destabilizing. I was like, in making the decision to marry this guy, I am inflicting severe harm onto him. So that guilt made me commit to the relationship. I was like, I'm in jail. I could not escape it. So at that point, when my dad disowned me, I came to a crash. I was like, something is not working out for me. I don't know where my life is leading. Nothing makes sense anymore. And there was no calling Derek, right? Because at that point, Derek had sent that email with, his hand on that person's ass, that triggered me as well. So it's like my life, I didn't know what to do. So I tried, I quit, I submitted my resignation at work. And I came back home, and I was telling John, I resigned from work, and he was shocked. He was like, what? you have to talk to me before you do these things. And I was like, why would I talk to you before I build my career on my own? I didn't have to talk to you then. Why should I talk to you now? But he would say, but because we are married. I was like, so we can live on your salary alone. We got you the raise. You know, you and I both were earning that much money in the past. We can live on your salary alone. He was like, no, it's not fair, Jen, you cannot do this. And at that point, that's it, right? At that point, I started saying, if you're not happy, you can divorce me. You know, because the level of distress I was feeling, I cannot explain it to anybody. It's like, I cannot explain. I was like, do you understand what I'm going through with my dad? Do you understand what it feels like for your dad to disown you and to say these things to you? It's creating, it's triggering me. And he'll be like, oh, Jen, there you go again. Everything is always about your traumas. All the time it's about you, your traumas. You don't you think that anybody else is going through anything? I'm like, okay, what are you going through? Sure, I'm listening. Then nothing. Has nothing to say. Like, okay, so me, I am sharing this with you. I am not feeling well. Something is happening and I no longer want to work. So I resigned my work, and at work they didn't want to let me go. So I try to blame my boss for not giving me the promotion I wanted. And then the CEO took me and said, okay, I'm going to put you in another company. Which salary do you want? Will this salary be good for you? I was like, what the fuck? No. It wasn't about that. I was like, it's about my father. I'm going through some things with my family. I need to deal with it. He's like, okay, fine. Take a time off. We'll keep paying you your salary. We'll hold the job for you, okay? And when you're done, you can come back and the job will be there. I was like, no, it might take a year or two. I don't feel good keeping. He was like, yeah, a year or two is not a problem. You keep getting your salary and we'll hold the job. And when you're done, after 2 years, you can just come back and the job, you keep getting paid. So I went to lunch and I never came back. Yeah. So as I shared that with John, he went into this whole rampage. Jen, how? You should have just taken the salary. I was like, no, because I have already been to something similar in the past, and I will share it later. Those lessons, it's like once I know. There's not, you, no matter what money, what things you present to me, I'm like, no. I know what it comes with. It's a trick. Yeah, I have enough guilt and distress in my life. I'm looking to alleviate my pain, not to add on to it. So I quit my job. I tried to invest in trading and I failed, and so I decided to go trek in the Himalayas. And I was like, I'm gonna go there alone. It's gonna be a proof to my challenge to myself. If I can do it by myself, no matter what's gonna happen, I'm gonna file for that divorce, right? So I went through that trip in the Himalayas. I didn't train. I went into the coldest season during the winter. They saw me coming with just a light jacket, and people were looking at me and they're like, Jennifer, is this all you brought? I was like, yeah, this is a good jacket. It's a Dawn. It's like the warmest jacket I ever had. It should be sufficient. And then, it was so cold. I was 3 days away from Mount Everest, and I was evacuated through helicopter because I got sick. Yeah, so at that point, I came back home. I didn't know what was gonna happen. So that's when John's mom, who retired already a couple of years before, started talking about her being ready to be a grandma. She wanted a kid, and John and I, we've been him and I, discussed that we never wanted kids. I didn't want any kids with him. But I love children. And I'll get into it because in college I worked with little boys. You see, I didn't even make the correlation. I have seen different aspects. My focus has always been my masculine aspect. You see, that's the aspect I needed to outgrow. And all my experiences were geared towards that. All my friends were men. Every environment I found myself with were always around men. I feel comfortable with men, because there was no bullshit. We just say things the way they are. So women, my feminine aspect, that was also a challenge, because it's like trying to guess what these people were saying to my sisters. It was always a headache, Yeah, I'll get into that later. So basically, I came back from trekking in the Himalayas, and I was floored. I didn't know what I was gonna do. That's when John and I started talking, and I was like, yes, I want to invest in something I love. I want to start a business. I don't know what it is gonna be, So at that point, we had some money aside, 19,000, that I was gonna put towards my business. I didn't know what it was. I wanted to take my time to figure it out. That is when Cheska called me one day and started saying that she resigned from her job because my dad also disowned her. She went on vacation at my dad's and my stepmom, and disrespected my stepmom. I'll go into it later, right? Because she was very challenged. Once my dad got married, she got very jealous of my stepmom and would say the most vile things about her, right? And as she went, because my dad was no longer giving her the attention she needed to grow up by herself. And she was just used to going and crying to my dad, and he would pay for everything. But things changed when he got married again and had other children. So as she went on vacation over there, she disrespected my stepmom, and my dad set up boundaries with her, So the same thing happened as he disowned her. She called me crying and saying that, she left her job. It no longer resonated true to her. You see, she was outgrowing her masculine aspect. I didn't know these things that, and she was telling me that she discovered her meaning, she knew her purpose, she knew what she wants to invest in. And it's true, all she did was just work out. She was always at the gym. She talked about eating healthy.